Okay, so now I've pulled our Lect11 starter code. So this is going to be a new thing where we incorporate React with sockets and databases. We're kind of putting everything together. So let's go ahead and do our regular steps of opening a new terminal, going into Lect1. Oh, sorry, going into Lect11 complete, or sorry, starter. Now we're going to do an npm run watch. So as usual, that just makes our React into a script. So let's open up a new shell. Now let's do Python app.py. Then let's preview our running application. So I'm going to try dragging this up here and seeing if, okay. So right now I don't think this is the right app. Let's try it. Let's try doing a refresh. Okay, cool. Now that I did a hard refresh, I see this USPS stuff. If I enter a new address and say add to DB, let's see what happens. So I'm just going to do test here, add to DB. It doesn't do anything right now. So I'm assuming we have to fill in some different components. So let's go ahead and explore some of our files. So we have app.py, which is our main file. There's this variable in all caps. So whenever I see a variable in all caps in software engineering, I'm pretty much assuming that's a key. So like some database key or a dictionary key, some sort of key basically. And if I were doing this correctly, this should probably be named key. But that's okay. Actually, it's named underscore channel, so it probably is the name of a channel. Cool. Cool, we're loading into our .env, we're doing a database thing, and we're setting up some stuff. I see my first to do. So emit all addresses. We basically have something here that we need to do. There's another to do in the on connect. The disconnect looks okay. And then on new addresses, this is interesting. So there's going to be an event for new address input with data. And then we're basically saying dbSession.add models.usps data address. So it looks like we're basically taking SQL Alchemy and saying, let's make a new models.usps. So again, that's that USPS class. And we're taking the address, which is going to be a string, and then adding to it and then committing it. And then we're emitting all addresses. So basically, because that function is well named, we know that this should emit all addresses. Even without a comment, I should be able to know exactly what it's doing. And it emits it on this channel, addresses received. And that was up here, addresses received. Cool. So we have two to-dos inside of here. We have to do this and we have to do that. Let's look at our other side. Let's look at the client side and see what's going on. So first, let's open up the main. It's rendering content. So let's go into content. We see addresses and set addresses, and then we're basically saying after the component mounts, whenever we get addresses, so we're receiving addresses on addresses received. So that's the channel name. Let's make sure that matches what we see here, and it is. So basically, whenever we do this emit all addresses, whenever we emit on that, we should be, we're basically listening on that same socket, and we're doing something here, and we're receiving those, and then we're setting those addresses. So set addresses is just, again, a React hook, and it's going to set the value of addresses inside of here to data all addresses. So that's interesting. We're looking for a key called all addresses, so that's something important to keep in mind here. I'm actually going to go ahead and write this down. To do content.jsx is looking for for a key called all addresses. Maybe I've spelled it wrong. Let me double check. So we're looking for all addresses. Cool. And then inside of here we have an OL, or an ordered list. We probably want to display all of our addresses. So I'm going to fill in this to do with to do display all addresses. Again, I don't need any like comments or anything. I just know what's going on just by reading the code. Then let's look at our button code. So our button code is saying let new addresses equal this, and then there's a to-do. Not sure what I want to do with this new address. And then it says send the address to the server. So based on context, I can say that to-do send the address on a socket to the server. Cool. And then we're setting the value here. So basically this get element by ID, I'm assuming that's a form or something. It looks like it's an input. Yep, right here. And I'm saying the value of it to 0. So we're just resetting the value of it. And then on submit, this is being called, this whole function. And the form gets submitted when you press enter or when you click the button. Cool. So I see a bunch of to-dos. I think I see a total of 5 to-dos. So let's go through them one by one. So first of all, let's go ahead and talk about emit all addresses. So inside of here, what we're going to do is we're going to look for a key for all addresses, and then we're going to emit into there. So we want to emit to all addresses. Okay, so let's start with that component. So first, well, we can get rid of this print to do. And then the way that we're going to emit is, again, socket io.emit. And then there's going to be a channel. We can just take the channel that's being inputted. And then inside of here, we have all addresses. And then this is a to-do. We have to fill this in. What this is going to be is all the addresses in our database. So let's go ahead and define all addresses. So this is going to get a little lengthy, so I'm going to go ahead and do the Python separator for this. So let's basically say that we have, well, first of all, let's write out the query. So it's going to be db.session.query. So basically this is saying I want to do a query on my database session. And then what type of data are we looking for? So it's that USPS models from before. And we want everything. We don't have any selectors or filters inside of there. And then this is basically going to get us USPS objects, but because we're emitting on socket, we basically want some strings inside of here. So what we want to do is actually take db address. So basically for db address, in this, we want to do something. So this is a list comprehension in Python, and all we're going to do is say db address.address. So address is the name of the field from before, and you can find that by going to pSQL and just typing, like looking at the different fields. It's all going to match. Or you can look at your models.py. Inside of here we see address, so we should be able to just find that address by doing something like this. Cool. And then let's see, oh, I have an extra bracket here. So this looks good to me, and then we just want to, instead of to do, let's just fill it in with all addresses. So this one looks good to me so far. Bear in mind that I didn't just come up with this on the fly or anything like this. I actually have the answers written down next to me. So I'm not just like some crazy genius. I had to debug this and do it myself. And then I deleted the code. So keep in mind that like if this doesn't come super natural to you, it's not like this isn't a 15-minute chore. It took me hours to come up with this. So keep that in mind when you're debugging your own code. Great. So on the onConnect, in order to basically say, hey, we have a new client, we've basically said, cool, like we've gotten a new client and we want to do something to that new client. Since this regular website, so if we opened up that website again, oops, let me go ahead and open that. So this is basically, I'm assuming that this is going to be a list of all the database, or all of the addresses we have so far. So when we have a new connection, we probably want to say, hey, here's all the addresses we have so far. Luckily, we have a helper method that does exactly that. So let's go ahead and call emit all addresses. And the channel again that content received was, it was using this all addresses, or sorry, it was using addresses received. And addresses received is this global variable up here. So let's go ahead and call emit all addresses on addresses received. Great. So I think that's all that to do was doing. Basically all we had to do was say emit all addresses. And then let's search for to do. Is there anything else in here? All right, this file looks clean. Let's move on and talk about content now. So inside of content, we want to display all the addresses. So we're getting all of the addresses here. So we're basically getting those inside of data all addresses. That's going to be every single address that we have. And all of those are going to be stored in our React hook inside of addresses. So we already have that. Now, what do we actually have to return? The only thing that we have to return at this point is basically all we're trying to do is put our addresses inside of an li block. So something like this. However, addresses are, right now, they're like this weird string kind of thing. So we want to make sure that we surround that with something like this. And then one more thing that we have to think about is addresses is an array right now, and we want an li, so this is a list element for every single thing inside of addresses. So the way that we do that in JavaScript is we actually do something like addresses.map. So this is going to run a MapReduce function, or a map function specifically. And then we can basically say, here are our parameters. So I'm going to take the element itself and the index of the element. And this is just special syntax in JavaScript that lets you do that. And then you can basically say li, and then inside of here, you can say address. So this is like that same list comprehension we had in Python, but now we're going to end up doing this inside of JavaScript. So, and then I end the parenthesis here. And then this is basically the list comprehension that we have. We're basically saying, take this, here, maybe this will be a little cleaner. So basically, for everything in addresses, get the element and the index, and then list the actual element inside of there. Now, the last thing that we want to do is we want to distinguish between different things. This is just a React and HTML thing. If you give each list element a key with the index, then that will basically tell you that, hey, cool, this is a unique element, even if it has the same element, even if it has the same name. Like if we have the same address twice, it'll still say like, hey, this is a unique element. Treat it as such. Don't just like remove the duplicates or something like that. Cool. So I feel like that to do is taken care of now. And now let's go ahead and talk about our button. So this is our last to do. And if we go inside of here, it says send the address on a socket to the server. So inside of here, let's go ahead and it says let new address be document.element.byId address input. So we need to take that and find the value. So the first thing I'm going to do is new address.value, and we're going to do something with this. What we're going to do is do a socket.emit as usual. And then whatever this is, I actually don't know what this is going to look like yet. And then inside of here, as usual, we're going to emit using a key value pair. So inside of here, it's probably going to be something like address, and then just give it this. Cool. And now let's actually figure out what this to do is going to be. So how we're going to do that is go into here, into our server, and be like, what are we looking for? So someone inputted the address. So let's go ahead and figure out what connection says, or what channel is looking for address inputs. So it looks like new address input, got an event for new address input with data. Great. So I'm just going to copy and paste this so that I don't make any typos, and just say new address input inside of here. And the address is just new address.value. I think that's all we need to do on this side as well. So let's save all of our files. I'm going to go ahead and save all of that stuff. And let's go ahead and see what happens. So I'm actually technically in debug mode, but I'm going to go ahead and rerun anyway. And let's preview our app and see what happens. Ooh, interesting. So something already happened. We already have all of these values inside of there. I don't like that. So let's go ahead and clear our pSQL. So I'm going to open up pSQL, type in my password. Then I'm going to look for /c Postgres. I've connected there, and then I'm just going to delete from USPS. Be careful with this command. It's just going to delete everything inside of that table. So make sure you want to do that. So I've deleted 13. Great. Now let's refresh this. I'm going to do a hard refresh. Oh, nothing's running here. Cool. Okay. Now let's do a hard refresh. And now I see nothing in here. So let's add a new address, 121 West 21st Street. I added that and it probably did some stuff. It definitely did something. Let's take a look and see what happens in the console. So it says we sent the address to the server and then we received the address from the server. Cool. And then let's do another address. So let's just say njit gitc and add that. Cool. Looks like everything's working. So we received addresses from the server, 121 West 21st and njit gitc. So now, and we're seeing the same thing on the server side. We got an event with this address and we got a new event with this address. And then the server, now if we put all the pieces together, the server is basically saying, cool, I got this new address. So it printed that thing and then it added it to it added the thing to our database and it committed it. And then it called emit all addresses. So if we go up to emit all addresses, we're going to say it's getting it's doing a query of all of our things. Just like we saw in our last lecture, it's just doing a straight query for every single address. It's getting the address field from those different records. And then it's emitting basically a string that has an array of strings to all of its subscribers with all addresses. And then if we go into if we go into content, we receive all those addresses and then we're basically displaying them. The way that we're displaying them is we're doing this map function, and the map function is basically saying, take an address, list it as an element. Take the index, list it as its key. And then the button basically it lets us send new values. So whenever we have a new value, we're taking that value, emitting it, and saying, aha, we have a new address input. Then we're logging that. We're saying set the value back to the default, and then once that happens, the whole process starts again. So this is our code. There's obviously places for us to improve on this. Actually, before I talk about that, let's go ahead and check our pSQL. So we inputted 121 West 21st and njit gitc. So let's go ahead and go in here. And let's do a select star from USPS. I'm actually seeing exactly that. I'm seeing the addresses. I'm seeing two records, one with 121 West 21st Street and one with njit gitc. Great. So it looks like not only are we displaying that stuff, but now if I actually refresh this page, well, of course, my server's down. But let's get our server back up. And so now I've done a hard refresh here, and all of that stuff still loads. It's still being stored in our database, and it's persistent. So obviously there are rooms for improvement here. So one of the big things that isn't great right now is that we're doing this emit all channels every time. So as this list grows to like 1 million elements, we're emitting 1 million elements over the socket IO. So that's not great. We might want to do that incrementally. That's outside the scope of today's lecture. We're not going to be talking about incremental socket emits or anything like that, but that is one thing that we might want to do. We might also want to cache the results and then push them periodically. That's another thing that we might want to talk about. And then lastly, we can do all of this in the background. So we don't have to emit on the foreground and block everything until that's done. So we might want to run this in the background. So that's another thing that we might want to do, that we might want to eventually end up changing. For now, this will work, and this is pretty solid for what we want to do. So let's just run with it. And the next step that we want to talk about is how we would actually push this to Heroku.